Midinda, good morning, hello and welcome again to Kroeder Kroghen. And the theme of today's programme is St. Samson, for no better reason really than that I was deciding that my son Gowan needed a haircut, which led me to idly speculate about losing strength when you get your hair cut, which made me think about the story of Samson and Delilah and so on. And it suddenly occurred to me that there were a lot of Cornish connections with the simple name Samson. So here they are. First of all, where does the name itself come from? Well, as everybody knows, it's a biblical name, it's Hebrew, and it means child of Shamash, who was a sun god, apparently. It was the name of the champion of the Israelites in the famous biblical story, and also of a Welsh bishop who passed through Cornwall, apparently avoiding the stormy seas off Land's End, because he was travelling from Wales to Brittany. He is the patron saint of Gollant, and gave his name to one of the Isles of Scilly, which I'll say more about in a moment. And apparently the name Samson was very common throughout the whole of Britain, and particularly common in Cornwall as well, a very popular Christian name, hardly seen at all now, of course, and it became obsolete after the Reformation. I don't know if there are any Samsons out there listening to me, very few, I suspect. Well, the story of the saint itself is pretty interesting. As always, when looking for historical accounts, I always turn to my Halliday's History of Cornwall first, F.E. Halliday, and this is the account he gives of St. Samson arriving. More reputable was Samson, whose journey across Cornwall in the time of Mark and Arthur, and I guess here, interrupting, we're talking about the 6th century A.D., whose journey across Cornwall in the time of Mark and Arthur is recorded in a life written not long after his death. After landing at Padstow, he stayed with the abbot of the recently founded monastery of Docco, in the district of Tricurius, that is at St. Kew. St. Kew was another Welsh one, apparently, in the hundred of Trig. Then, with a cart and horses, he and his monk set off along the old trade route towards the south coast. But he had not gone far before he saw a number of people dancing round a heathen image on the top of a hill. He paused, therefore, to convert and baptize them, and to slay a dragon, useful thing to be able to do in those times, before pursuing his way to Gollant near Castle Door, where the church still bears his name. Then from the Foy estuary he sailed to Brittany to found the monastery of Dol. Well, there have been quite a few elaborations on the conversion of the people dancing around the heathen image on the top of the hill, and like many of these saints' legends, they just grow and they grow. One of the legends about St. Samson connects him to St. Padarn, who gave his name to the Petherwinds, north and south, roughly the same district, but further north. Apparently, when Samson was crossing from Wales to Cornwall, St. Padarn, who was in Cornwall, got news that he was coming, and because they were first cousins, both from Wales, he was so delighted to hear that his cousin was coming that he leapt out of bed exactly as he was to go and meet him, and he'd only put on one shoe and one stocking. So he ran to greet St. Samson with one leg and one foot stockinged and shoed, and the other naked. There is also, according to the Reverend Lane Davis's book on the Holy Wells of Cornwall, a holy well dedicated to St. Samson at South Hill. I assume this means South Hill by Gollant, because there is another South Hill, of course, and that's South Hill actually on the island of Samson, which I assume gets its name through some connection with the saint. Samson is one of the Isles of Scilly, of course, and it was occupied until 1855, when the last few inhabitants were ordered to leave by the Lord Proprietor, apparently because 15 of the young men of Samson were drowned in a shipwreck, and it became impossible for a living to be maintained on the island. There's a very interesting burial chamber, Kistveen, or chest stone, burial stone box on the North Hill of St. Samson, and to the east are the Samson Flats, very well known in the Scillies, large areas of sand which are exposed at low water, where the stones of former fields can still be seen. So, just that simple name, Samson, carries a lot of history and legends all the way from the east of Cornwall right the way to the west in the Isles of Scilly. Well, Samson was featured in a large, elaborate musical composition by an Irish composer, Sean Davy, which was produced for the Celtic festival at Lorient. And the texts used in the composition were Irish, Scots and Welsh, and there was one Cornish text, and it was about St. Samson. The title of the piece is called Samson Peccator Episcopus. That's Latin, I know, not Cornish. And it means Samson, sinner, bishop, or Bishop Samson the sinner. And it refers to that legend I mentioned earlier of Samson converting heathens dancing round a stone image, and his apparent miraculous conversion of the stone image to a cross by a simple touching with his hand. The opening two verses set the scene with St. Samson arriving on the beach, and then you'll hear the words, an epscop clor, the mild bishop, a maul tools in mes and more, or vorthen rules. The mild bishop is coming out of the sea on the moorland road. And then shortly after that you'll hear Dres an hala ongentel, lies tremenia sabel. On the heath gather many voyagers from afar. In Crees Kernewek, in the middle of Cornwall. And then towards the end you'll hear sung quite loudly the words Marthas, Marthas, wonderful, extraordinary, Marthas, Marthas. Because what Samson has done, Samson has converted this pagan image into a holy cross by simply touching it with his hand. Strange mixture of Cornish and Latin. Samson Peccator Episcopus, Bishop Samson the sinner, and the legend of him converting that graven image into a Christian cross. Interesting, isn't it, that all that came about because my son needed a haircut. Next week, I shall be telling you about yesterday's meeting of the closed Gorseth, which, as its name suggests, is a meeting of the bards of the Gorseth of Cornwall, which is not open to the public. And I'll also be telling you a little more about a new tape that's been produced by St.Ives. The group, the name St.Ives means our tongue, and they produced a tape called Flaws Haferneth, Wisdom and Nonsense, Nonsense and Wisdom, put it the right way around, tape 1 some months ago, and now they've come up with tape 2, which is another interesting mixture of comedy and more serious readings. And here's a quick extract from the tape to give you a flavour of its humour. Our intrepid reporter from Holdall, the news, is interviewing a man who's about to leap off the cliffs at Gwithian wearing some wings made out of chicken feathers. His plan is that if he doesn't actually fly, he'll float down to the sea and swim away to safety.
Den frame gans bostic. Brenton, eh?
Pity the dull, Fred.
Peer simple, pard, peer simple. Me have in Ponya is an Oldsma, Halama, a bingo, a fifth of Eonidja. In that case, Marnira putra mosinta, alavi de skinna in more.
Well, Fred, John Starthies, may his pragavin to Geerland drabberillisma.
Rakerno, pard, Rakerno. Well, Parizov, Kerno bizviken.
Cal is luck, Mordrigio.
And you probably don't need telling that Mordrigio is the Cornish for the tide is out. And my tide is out as well, and my time. So, mi ara leveroldiwch in with arte, mi aragus gwelys nesa seithan, myras the hui ogus lois orthif, ha, bis enna, du genna hui, God be with you all, du genna hui.